Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 12th of March of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. On this video we will start with the most important thing these days. We're going to talk about oil prices. According to media, the oil prices have started to rise again. And for example, by the evening of the 12th of March of 2026, the prices for WTI crude were on the level of $95. The price for Brent crude was on the level of $99.66. And for example, the price of Murban crude was on the level of $117. Just 12 hours ago, during the previous video, we discussed the prices for oil on the morning of the 12th of March of 2026, and I would like to remind you that on the morning of the 12th of March, the price of oil Brent was on the level of $98.07, which means just during the previous 12 hours, the price for this mark of oil has increased for more than $1.50, so something like this, which means that the prices for oil have started to rise again, and we see that nobody is able to stop this process, especially the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, can no longer stop the rise in oil prices with just simple promises. I would like to remind you that the last time the price for oil dropped significantly when the President of the United States of America had a call with the President of the Russian Federation. This conversation took place several days ago, and the President of the United States of America promised to lift sanctions on Russia. At least this information was provided by a special aide of the Russian Federation, Ushakov. He stated that probably the United States of America will lift some sanctions. But today, the Secretary of Finance of the United States of America told the media that the United States of America are not going to lift sanctions on the Russian Federation. And all these things, these promises and these statements, and of course the situation in the Strait of Hormuz forces the prices for oil to move further, to rise more and more and more. Of course, the United States of America are trying to stabilize the situation on the global market, and today the United States of America promised to release 172 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserve. But for example, The Economist stated that this is not enough. So as a result of the beginning of the conflict on the territory of the Middle East, market lost 15 million barrels of oil per day because of this conflict in the Middle East, and the United States of America and its allies can replace with these strategic reserves just 3 million barrels. So of course one can say that this situation, this energy crisis, is something like the beginning of the golden age for the Russian Federation, but the thing is not like this. For example, today we start receiving reports that Russia has begun deploying former Wagner PMC and personnel on tankers carrying Russian oil through the Baltic Sea. According to the project, citing European and Ukrainian intelligence, Russia has formed special ship protection groups consisting of 2 additional crew members with ties to Russian security forces. So now the Russians understand that with the beginning of this golden age, reading quotes, a very dangerous period of time has also started for the Russian Federation, because the prices are growing, are rising, which means that most likely the European countries would be forced to become more aggressive against the Russian ships and vessels in the Baltic Sea, anywhere in the area that stick to the territory of the European Union and to the NATO countries. So the logic is simple. The Iranians block the Strait of Hormuz, and this situation can force the NATO countries and the European countries to block the export of the Russian Federation through the Baltic Sea and through the Mediterranean Sea, which obviously can drop the Russian export significantly. At the same time, the Ukrainians refuse to unblock the Druzhba pipeline, which also affects the Russian export. And all these things and the drone attacks of the armed forces of Ukraine on the energy infrastructure of the Russian Federation in the end can force the Russians to begin a negotiation process with the Iranians. So obviously through this energy situation, the European countries will try to force the Russians, to force the Iranians to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. So that is why the Russians are trying to stay focused these days. They're trying to protect their vessels, they're trying trying to protect their ships against possible aggression and unauthorized actions of different countries, and we will see what kind of things will be made from this situation. Anyway, the Ukrainians also understand that the situation is critical because the Russians began earning too much money. The sources are saying that the Russians began earning additional $150 million per day just because of the prices for oil. So, and that's a lot of money. The Ukrainians understand that with this, the Russians will be able to earn a lot of money, and the Russians will be able to finance the conflict on the territory of Ukraine for the next years, maybe 1 year, maybe 2, maybe even more. So that is why the Ukrainians began bombing and attacking the energy infrastructure of the Russian Federation significantly. For example, during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians launched another massive attack, and as a result of this attack, the Ukrainians managed to destroy the Tikharetska oil refinery. And for example, this video was published by Russian sources this morning. Here we can see the consequences of the Ukrainian attack. As you can see, another oil refinery of the Russian Federation was significantly damaged or maybe even destroyed. So this is the situation in this area. We have lots of videos published by different sources from different angles where we can see the consequences of the Ukrainian attack. Furthermore, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation during the previous report stated that the Ukrainians attacked this object of energy infrastructure that the Russians use to support Turkey and several European countries through the Blue Pipeline and Turkish Pipeline. So on the night of March 11th, the Ukrainians, in attempt to disrupt gas supplies to European consumers, launched another attack using drones against the infrastructure of the Ruska compressor station in the village of Gaykadzor, which supplies gas via the Turkish Stream pipeline. So the Russians are saying that they managed to repel this attack, but we understand that this is not the last attack, and most likely the Ukrainians will continue attacking this territory, because now this is the vital question for the Ukrainians to cut the export of Russian gas and oil. The Ukrainians understand that this is the key, maybe not to the victory for the Ukrainian side, but at least to the situation when the Russians will not be able to continue the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. So everybody understands this. So that is why in coming days we'll see more attacks from the Ukrainian side. But the sources are saying that due to attacks in the southern regions of Russia, due to the recent attack in the area of the Bryansk region, the Russians have prepared another massive missile attack that most likely is going to take place either between the 12th and the 13th of March, or between the 13th and the 14th of March of 2026. So during the next 48 hours, the Russians may attack the territory of Ukraine with all means they have, with cruise missiles, with Iskander missiles, with drones, and with hypersonic missiles. The Russians once again most likely will try to attack objects of energy infrastructure, critical infrastructure, and maybe the Russians will attack decision-making centers, because the situation is very difficult, and the Russians understand that there are barriers in front of the golden age of the Russian Federation based on the prices of oil, but there are several barriers in front of Russians, and probably the conflict in Ukraine is the first and the most important barrier for the Russian Federation. So that is why the Russians will try to resolve the conflict in Ukraine as soon as possible, and to shift their focus in the direction of Iran, with the purpose probably to support the current status of the Strait of Hormuz. Now let's continue with the situation on the ground. And first, let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the Russians intensifying their spring offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos from the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction. As you can see, the Russians began bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine significantly, using all types of weapons they have. In this video, we can see how the Russians were attacking the villages of Verkhnya Tersa and Vozdvizhivka with aviation and with bombs. All these videos are telling us just about things. The Russians are intensifying their offensive operation with the purpose to establish complete control over these two settlements and with the purpose to open the way further in the southwestern direction towards the city by the name of Orekhov. So the Russians are tasked in short period of time to establish complete control over this territory, and if the Russians are able to do this, then they will immediately continue offensive operation further in the southwestern direction with the purpose to attack the city of Orekhov from behind. And then from these positions, the Russians will continue offensive operation further in the northwestern direction with the purpose to outflank the main Ukraine positions along the Konska River from the north. The Ukrainians stopped their counter-offensive operation in the Zaporizhzhia direction. As of now, it's very difficult to understand why the Ukrainians stopped this counter-offensive. Maybe they managed to complete objectives, or maybe they finished everything they were tasked for. Very difficult to say, or maybe the Ukrainians were exhausted. Anyway, now we see that the Russians launched several counter-attacks in this area, and as a result of counter-attacks, the Ukrainians restored control in the area of the settlements of Novogrigorovka and Verbova. Most likely the Russians will intensify their counter-offensive operation with the purpose to restore complete control over the territories they lost during the Ukrainian February counter-offensive operation. But at the same time, the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions around the villages of Nechaevka and Danilovka. Based on the report that was published by a neutral mapper, we have adjusted the map. So we see that the pace of the Ukrainian counter-offensive operation slowed down significantly, maybe even stopped at some directions, and now the Russians are trying to return the initiative in this area in their hands. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dobropolye direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of updates from the area, from the triangle of Dobropolye, Grishina and Belitska. We have adjusted the map in the southern part of Belitska based on the video published by pro-Ukrainian sources. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians were counter-attacking Russians in the southern part of the settlement. We will not watch the video due to violence. Furthermore, the Russians intensified their drone attacks in the southern part of the settlement of Dobropolye. During the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were published from this part of the city of how the Russians were attacking soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine with FPV drones. So it seems that the Russians are very close to the southern part of Dobropolye, and the battle for the city itself will start very, very soon. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous 24 hours, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the area of the village of Ilinivka. Several sources today reported that the Russians have already captured the settlement of Ilinivka, and we are waiting for the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. It seems that in coming days, the Minister of Defense of Russia will confirm control over at least two settlements in the conflict. We are talking about the settlement of Ilinivka, and most likely the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm Russian control over the settlement of Grishina. So the Russians are intensifying their activities in the Donbas direction with the purpose to establish complete control over the territory, and the Russians will try to do this by the end of 2026. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received almost anything, just a small adjustment of the map in the area of the village of Fedorovka Druga. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed that the Russians managed to capture this forest and the southern part of the settlement. Based on the report published by a pro-Ukrainian source, we have adjusted the map. The Russians, as we can see, are keeping advancing further in the direction of the city of Slaviansk. As for the northern directions, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the territory between the city of Volchansk and the foothold in the northeastern part of Kharkiv region. We see how the Russians were bombing this territory with TOS flamethrower systems. The Russians have begun bombing this territory a long time ago, and the Russians are trying to reduce the resistance of the armed forces of Ukraine before the beginning of the ground operation. That's most likely is going to start very, very soon. So, and we have finished and covered the most important updates about the Ukrainian conflict. Now let's move to the Middle East. According to information we have, the Iranians continue bombing and attacking vessels and tankers in the Persian Gulf. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos from this area. For example, this video was published by the pro-Iranian sources, and here we can see how the situation in the area of the Strait of Hormuz looks like. Here we can see lots of tankers and vessels blocked by the Iranians in this area without any chances to cross this territory. According to different sources, during the previous 24 hours, several tankers and vessels were trying to cross this territory with the purpose to enter first the Gulf of Oman and then to move further in the direction of Arabian Sea, but the Iranians attacked these vessels with drones or with missiles, and as a result of those attacks, the vessels were completely destroyed. Especially a lot of vessels were attacked and struck by the Iranians in the area of the southern borders of Iraq. From this area we received lots of videos where we can see how the navy drones of Iran were attacking vessels in this part of the Persian Gulf, and this is a very important situation because the Iranians are using not just air drones or missiles, they began using navy drones, and now we see that due to the fact that these are the first experience of the Iranian forces, which means that the Iranians as of now are practicing on vessels and tankers, probably for something bigger. So now the Iranians are practicing to attack tankers, vessels in the Persian Gulf, and when they receive enough of experience, most likely they will shift their focus to the Navy forces of the United States of America in the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea. By the way, today we received a very interesting update from the Red Sea. According to information we have, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford is staying in the area instead of entering the Gulf of Oman to join the U.S. Abraham Lincoln strike carrier group. Furthermore, according to information we have today, we had reports that this strike carrier group experienced a fire, not a combat related. So something happened on the board of this aircraft carrier group, but the official U.S. authorities claim that there is no connection with the combat situation. Anyway, the situation is very strange, and according to information we have, this carrier group is not going to move further in the direction of the Abraham Lincoln carrier group. So another important thing that we received today from different pro-Ukrainian sources is that the Ukrainians began redeploying their drone operators in the direction of Middle East with the purpose to fight with the Iranian drones. So this is the public version of this update. I would like to point your attention and to give you my opinion that I made based on the reports that were made by small Telegram channels of the Ukrainian armed forces. So you know that every single brigade of the armed forces of Ukraine has their own Telegram channel where they published lots of interesting updates and insights, and I would like to share with you one interesting report. According to several brigades, according to some admins of their channels, the armed forces of Ukraine began redeploying FPV drone operators in the direction of the Middle East. Not just operators of drones or anti-drone drones with the purpose to improve the air defense forces of the Middle East states, but also the Ukrainians began redeploying FPV drone operators. We need to understand that FPV drone operator is not able to bring down, let's say, missile or drone like Gerань from the Iranian side. The only thing that FPV drone operators can do is to attack soldiers, vehicles, and so on. So it seems that the United States of America, the coalition, continue preparation, the ground operation in Iran, and now they're trying to prepare or to collect a group of FPV drone operators from the Ukrainian side who has lots of experience. Because we need to understand, even if the ground operation carried out by the coalition, let's say on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz is successful, let's say if the coalition, let's say as a result of a ground operation is taken under control this territory, and if the coalition is able to land up to 10,000 soldiers of the coalition soldiers, it doesn't mean that the operation itself is successful. The most important situation whether this contingent is able to hold their positions on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz. And now it's clear, and we understand, according to the modern warfare, that it's not enough just to take under control the territory. It is important to dig in deeper. And of course, it will be very difficult to do if you are under very heavy fire, let's say, from the FPV drone operators of the Iranian side. Furthermore, today we received reports, at least from the Ukrainian intelligence, that the Russians are moving their forces in the direction of Iran as well. Probably the Russians are sending FPV drone instructors, so they're doing the same thing as the Ukrainians are doing right now. And I must tell you, if the Iranians, let's say, have 50 or 100 experienced FPV drone operators, this could be a very big trouble and headache for any kind of contingent on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz. And in this case, the only possible way how to save control over the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz, to have your own group of experienced FPV drone operators. And when talking about the coalition, the only experienced group of FPV drone operators they can have is FPV drone operators from the Ukrainian side. So it seems that something like this is brewing in the area of the Middle East, and in coming days we will see a duel once again between FPV drone operators of the Russian Federation in Ukraine, but this time not on the territory of Ukraine itself, but most likely on the territory of the Middle East. So this is the current situation, and the situation is very difficult, as we can see. And that's it for today. The Military with Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.